Welcome back to the Colors of Crush podcast. My name is Max Sternberg, aka WoundedSatellite, and I'm joined, as always, by Godzilla himself, Max P, the Italian man. How you doing today, Max?
Hey, what's going on, Max? I see Suki hanging out in the background. What's going on, Doggy?
Oh, is she visible?
Oh, yeah.
We got to. I don't know if you're gonna cut the edges where people will see her, but Suki is. Right
Oh no,
there.
we're not cutting it. We're cutting it. Suki's part of the podcast, as far as I'm concerned. So.
Suki is a great. She's the best member of the show.
Hell yeah,
dude. She's what people are actually tuning in to see. I've had a lot of people bring up my dog since the Mind Sculptors in the last one because when I've been playing with them, they're like, "Oh, your dog is so cute."
Yeah, hell yeah, hell yeah.
Want to host the best CDH events in the world? I got the right software for you, Eminence Gaming and the Command Tower software. You want to be a TO? Have easy access to decklist submissions, player management, and just a few clicks of a button. And if your players want to see what they need, all they need to do is scan one QR code, and they have access to the bracket page. This will show them their live pairings and live round results, so they can be updated on how they're doing in the tournament. Make your tournament the best that it could possibly be with the Command Tower software.
Yeah. So new place, yet another top 16 though this weekend. So some things changed, but not. You just still
results stay the
same. Right. Exactly. New city, same result. So.
Yeah, I got to Denver, Colorado Friday morning. I'm staying with this awesome kind of like some family friend people, and I told them, I was like, oh, I have a tournament I can play on Saturday, but I didn't want to be disrespectful and just disappear for like 12 hours right away. And they were like, nah, man, that's your thing. Like, go do it. So I said, okay, fuck it. And I signed up for Mox Masters when there was just a couple spots left on the Top Deck page. And yeah, I was able to get another top 16, which always feels great to do.
Yeah, awesome. So here's what we're going to do today. We're going to go through your experience once again. I want to hear like what happened. I know there were some games that were more interesting than others, and hear what happened. Get the inside scoop, and then after we do that, we'll break down the meta of the tournament a little bit. This was a wonky meta. I think some things were definitely different than we've seen. And we can
Very
speculate as to why when we get to that. And then lastly, let's talk about 2024 a little bit. What do we think is going to happen in 2024? What do we want? What are our goals? What are we hoping to achieve? And do that. And we also are going to announce the winner of our giveaway of the One Ring autographed by you and me. So Max, who won?
Our winner is Gaspel at William Prudhomme 91, with his comment being his favorite magic moment of 2023 was getting to play with Cobblepot, who I do not know who that is. He said he took a spicy brew out just because I was a fan. He got into CDH because of his decks, and his favorite card of 2023 was Max. You want to say which one it was? You want me to say it? Okay. The favorite card of 2023 was Talion the Kindly Lord, which was an awesome card from 2023.
Yes,
Talion. Hey, I also love Talion.
Hell yeah.
And we did randomize this. This was a
totally random number.
We
yeah.
didn't just pick it because it said it wasn't just because it said Talion.
Yeah.
I literally looked at Max after he told me what it was, and I was like,
Yeah, but honestly, totally random. We random number generator and then picked that comment, and that's it.
Yeah.
So congrats,
Yeah.
William. Yeah.
Yeah. So we will. If you see this, which I hope you do, please contact one of us through Discord or on YouTube. I think you can message or literally in any imaginable way. So probably easiest way is Discord. Just look up Wounded Satellite and you'll be able to find me. And just send me a message and we'll get you your card as soon as we can. We still got to order it and sign it, but then we'll get it straight to you. Yeah. So should I start going through rounds?
Yeah, we can do that. But I'll just point this out before you get started. You'll notice we have had a little bit of an upgrade. I got this new badass microphone, so hopefully my voice sounds real good right now. Real good.
And when you move places and you always forget something, right? You gotta forget something. And I was so thorough, man. I checked every room multiple times. I was like, there's no way I'm forgetting anything in Ohio. It turns out when your webcam is attached to a gooseneck on a shelf where you're playing Magic, sometimes you forget to look up. And so I was like signed up for Mox Masters Friday night, and I was like, oh, I should probably play a game of Magic and just get my setup set up so I know it works. And I realized I forgot my camera, so I had to run to Best Buy. So I upgraded. I bought a new Logitech webcam. That is what I use for playing games, and is now also what I'm going to use to record now. So you might notice that I'm a little crisper now. You can see my individual beard hair. It's a little better.
Yeah, beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Yeah, much better. I like it. And then also you're getting a new microphone too. So the shitty
getting a new microphone.
the shitty microphone effect you've had all this time. But yeah, you're getting my old microphone, so that will be a vast improvement to the absolute garbage audio we've had for the last 4 months. So yay, congrats.
Daddy Satellite is doing a hand me down to the family. We
That's how
appreciate
we do
it. We
it. That's how we
appreciate it.
do. That's how we do.
It's coming in the mail tomorrow. So we were like trying to wait till it got here to record, but we had to just get it done.
Yeah, and we're double recording episodes this week because I will be in New Orleans on vacation next week, so I will not be around. So so Mox Masters December, you top 16 again. How'd it go? Like, how was the tournament this time?
It was good. Honestly, it was one of those days I woke up and I was just like, this is the day. I was like, I think I'm just like super calm right now. I was a little tired. I've gotten really comfortable with tournament play. There's absolutely no nerves at all for me anymore. It's just kind of like wake up and go. And I got a bunch of messages from people just be like, today's your day, bro. And I was like, honestly, I think it is. So I was really like hoping I was going to win. Ended up round one. I was immediately fourth seat. I was like, okay, good start. We had Snazzer in first seat on Rogsai in the play. We had your Priscilla, who ended up being one of the people who top forward the event, on Crom Rayhan in second seat. We had R. Smith on Rocco in third seat, and myself on Kinnan in fourth. This game divulged really quickly into one of those games of just multiple people with card advantage engines. So Priscilla and myself both had a Ristic Study or a Mystic Grimoire. I think we both had a Ristic. Rocco ended up in a dominating board presence where they like had win on board for their following turn, the turn that Rogsai decided to go for it. And we had enough interaction that like Rogsai could not get there. And at the end of his turn, when he obviously couldn't get there, I was like, and I even like had more stack interaction in my hand. And I was like, please stop. Like at this point, you're not going to win. We have to fight through additional players here. And Priscilla was like, I can't win right now. And I was like, you're telling me that if we pass the turn to you, you are going, which we had a conversation, and she was pretty much like, yes, I'm going to be able to hold up interaction and deal with the Rocco player to make sure that they cannot win. And I was like, sounds perfect. That was what she said is her current situation. And when people say that, I assume they're telling the truth. And she was. And then Snazzer was like, oh, well, let me just play one more card. And I was like, don't. Like we just got to an understanding that like this is where the game is at right now. She's not going to go for a win. We're going to deal with the problems on the board. And like obviously in your position on Rogstar right now, you want this game to go to a draw. Giving anyone any additional resource is bad here. And then he was like, well, I'm going to do it. And he played an LED and he paid for my Ristic when I was third next in the rotation and didn't pay for Priscilla's, which was weird to me. And I was like, why would you ever do that to the player going next while everyone else is pretty much tapped out? So that was a very strange play that we talked about after the game. And the card she drew was Phyrexian Metamorph from him. Or it was, sorry, her draw for turn was Metamorph. So Snazzer drawing her one more card allowed her to draw the Metamorph, which she then got to ETB as a dockside for 13 treasures, which is what allowed her to win the game. And so she was like, before that Metamorph, I absolutely was not going to win the game. I was going to interact and pass. And because he drew her the Metamorph, it tossed her the game where obviously we did not have the resource to deal with her 17 card hand where she had the most mana. And I had like 10 cards in hand. And Snazzer was then like, well, if that didn't happen, then you just won the game. And I was like, well, we talked after the game, and her answer for the Rocco player was Opposition Agent, as well as a Deluge. And my line to win the game with the hand I had was Tezzeret, so I also wouldn't have been able to get there, and the game probably would have gone to a draw. There was like 5 minutes left. So yeah, it was a weird play to give her additional resource that I would kind of call upon. And after the game, we talked about it, and I said the thing about like we had the conversation. She said this is where she's at. Giving any additional resource changes where she's at. And he was like, yeah, it was a lucky draw, but like I do agree. So we kind of came to a conclusion on that one. So we lost to Priscilla in round one. I go into round two, and I got to be on the play for this one. I got to think real quick about what these decks were. In second seat was Winota. In third seat was, I believe, Tivit. And then in fourth seat, I believe, was Shurikai. Yeah, so I looked at this pod. And I was like, that is a very rough pod for me. That is a pod with kind of an egregious amount of answers to my deck. That's
a rough pod for anyone, frankly, but yeah.
That was a Saxy control pod. I ended up mulling to 6, and I looked at my 6, and it was just like Mana Crypt, Talisman, 2 lands, Spellskite, Trinisphere. And I was like, on the play? Yeah, let's get
Oh,
it. So I slam a turn 1 Trinisphere,
yeah, good
and
game.
it was somebody, the Shurikai player, it was like, that's a weird card in Kinnan. Come to find out at the end of the game, he had turn 2 natural Isochron win that the Trinisphere just dunked on. And so he was a little mad
Oh
about it.
yeah,
But so yeah, I controlled the game of Trinisphere. Winota, honestly, the Winota player helped me out. They immediately slammed a Deafening Silence, and then they slammed a Magus of the Moon when I had rocks, and I was like, this is great, thank you. And then I ended up having one random Kinnan flip that hit a Con Sphinx. Because he played them, it was in response to the Magus of the Moon, because it was gonna turn off my lands, and so I was like, oh, I can actually only activate Kinnan right now. And I had a Hullbreaker Horror in my hand, but I couldn't win with it yet, and I didn't want to win with Hullbreaker Horror because I knew the Trinisphere was so important to what was going on right now. And I didn't have the rock, because the only way to win through a Trinisphere with a Hullbreaker Horror is you need. Well, no. You can do it if you have access to Grim Monolith or Mana Vault, because they produce 4 mana. So if you have like a Soul Ring and a Mana Vault, a Mana Crypt and a Grim Monolith, any of those types of combinations, you can still win with the Hullbreaker Horror through the Trinisphere, which is what I try and cultivate situationally. If I do have a Trinisphere on the battlefield, I would much rather not bounce it. And it was obvious that people were being held back by it. But so in response to the Magus of the Moon, which is going to turn off my colored mana for Kinnan flips, and because I wasn't ready for a Hullbreaker win, I said, let me random spin instead of throwing up the Hullbreaker, hit the Con Sphinx, and then just absolutely controlled the shit out of this game for the remaining like 2 turns until I just confidently won with essentially defense grid back.
Yeah, those are the games where
so that one,
when you finally win, your opponents are like, thank God, get me out.
Yeah, no, straight up. They're like, fuck this. Like, honestly,
Uncle,
they were really mad at the guy. They were really mad at the guy for playing the Magus of the Moon, which, like, I agree. That was incorrect to do there. Because when I'm in such a dominating position, like, putting down a piece where I was the only one with colored mana rocks on board anyway, so, like, sure, it's going to hurt me, but it hurts me less than my opponents, and you are in a position that you need your opponents to help stop me, so it was incorrect to play the Magus in my eyes. I definitely think they should have worked together and communicated more with the table about what is going to be able to, at least get the game to a position that everyone has a chance, rather than kind of handing me the game in that way.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, Stacks players got to be careful, which I have noticed, and this is not, I apologize if this is incorrect, I'm not trying to talk shit, but kind of like we talked about before, a lot of the Winota players I've randomly been paired up against lately, in my pregame conversations with them, and I did not have this conversation this time, so I don't know this to be true, but a lot of them have been newer CDH players, because Winota is one of those easier to pick up decks. So I do wonder if he might be, in the grand scheme of things, a newer CDH player, and if you don't have a lot of experience with the format, and you're on these types of Stacks decks, a lot of times you're just like, this is what I got, and you play it, rather than really thinking about how it affects the game state and everything. So definitely really, really powerful when you're not in a commanding position to communicate with your opponents to make sure you're not going to prevent them from stopping what someone else is doing.
Right.
Is a piece of advice I would give.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if there's been a bunch of Winota in this tournament or not, or is it just the one? I don't.
Just happened to be paired up against him.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, he wasn't a name I knew, so
there were three Winota entries, and it looks like
I was against
none of them converted. Only one win across all 3 decks, and 3 draws, and
Winota.
Yeah, so yeah, kind of rough.
Round 3 was fun though. Round 3 was a pod I was actually very, very hyped for. We had Caveman, who is, one of the guys friends with Arctics on the Ristic Buddies. Yep. I have like streamed games with him before. Super awesome guy, super nice guy, and he was running Talion. Italian list very close to ours, a couple of differences, but overall very, very similar. In second seat, we had Clutch Crit, who he started this game letting me know that I am his nemesis. Because
Shots fired.
He is yet to beat me in a tournament game. I've won every time we've ever been matched up, and he keeps having to mull very low every time we've been matched up. So it's not his fault. But like he was the one where I had the game where he was on Dihada, and I Phyrexian Metamorphed in Elsha, and was able to force a Vigor off the top to stop his breach line into my Transmute Artifact at instant speed. Like, he was that loss. So he's just been unfortunate. He's been unfortunate against me a couple times. We played a few tournaments ago, and I was on the play. I mulled the 4 and just nattied the Basalt in one. And like, I got one Kinnan flip that hit a Gilded Drake to steal his Thrasios that he played. And I was just like, thanks. Just kind of like not the Elsha one was a great game. The second one was just lucky bullshit. And then this one, Clutch Crit had it. And this was, he said he thinks this is the worst punt that he's ever had. He's a phenomenal player. This is not in any way saying anything negative against him. It's just the recap. And he was a little upset with himself with this one. Oh, but in third seat was Tago Throws Rocks, who's a guy I know from
the Play to Win Discord. He was playing Tago Kadama when I first met him, and he was on Sisei for this tournament. And then I was on Kinnan once again in fourth seed, so I went fourth, first, fourth. And we ended up in a position in this game where I played a Trinisphere again, Trinisphere MVP, and I've never seen a Rogsai even attempt to win through a Trinisphere, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he actually was going to and should have done it. His line was so fucking sick, dude. Really important, there was a Blood Chief's Ascension on the battlefield. Active Blood Chief's Ascension from the Italian deck, and that's the key card here. He ends up going on this fucking incredible line where he has Breach and he has to get certain things and pitch cards, and then he plays plays his Swan Song to stop a counter on the Demonic Consultation. It goes to the graveyard, and then to have the cards to recast the Swan Song, he Chain of Vapored his Thoracle and sacked a bunch of lands to bounce his own things just to get cards into the graveyard so he could recast the Swan Song one more time to save his Demonic Consultation. And something along very similar to those lines. But what ended up happening was, as he's sacking the lands, they're also triggering Blood Chief's Ascension. And he ended up in a position on the board with the Chain of Vapor, the Swan Song, and the Demonic, the Chain of Vapor, one other, so I think Swan Song and Demonic Consultation, all going to the graveyard when he had 6 life. And his last Chain of Vapor, he targeted his Breach for some reason instead of the Blood Chiefs. And the second he said that target, I said, just pass. I told everyone, I was like, just pass. And he looked at me, he was like, what? And he goes, oh, fuck. And he realized what he'd done and that he didn't bounce the Blood Chiefs. And so now he was just, so what ended up happening was literally it was Thassa's Oracle trigger on the stack, Demonic Consultation card, Chain of Vapor graveyard, go to 4 life. Other card, go to the graveyard, go to 2 life. Demonic Consultation, exile library, go to the card. Go to 0 life with the Thoracle trigger literally as the next thing on the stack. Perfectly timed out to just not win the game. He 100% deserved to win that game. The line on his win turn that he took to make it, I genuinely want to applaud. That was such a sick turn, and I would have been absolutely no qualms with losing to that. It was fucking incredible. And then we got to a really awkward position on the following turn where, because the Blood Chiefs was there and Sisei had a card advantage engine, so they had a lot of cards in hand. And I had a full grip about, I think. And I didn't have win in hand yet. And Sisei was really concerned about just dying. And so they were like, well, I can Otawara the Trinisphere, and then I can play out a couple more cards from my hand. And I was like, I think you need to Otawara the Blood Chief's Ascension, because they were at 14 life and they had 13 cards in hand, and they were just going to have to discard for turn. And I was like, think of it this way. If you Otawara the Blood Chief's Ascension, you're safe to discard, and you go into your next turn still at 14 life. If you Otawara the Trinisphere, you then are able to cast, it was like a Chrome Mox and a Deadly Rollick. They could just get out of their hand for free because they were out of mana. And then they would have to go down to about 4 life from discards. And I was like, so then that's great and all. And his thought was he had a bunch of interaction hand. He had a silence, he had a counterspell, whatever. But I was like, then if you use any of your interaction, you kill yourself because of the Blood Chief's Ascension. So you're in a lose-lose here. But I think it is more correct for you to leave the Trinisphere and not get your life low than to bounce the Trinisphere and leave the Blood Chiefs and accept death no matter what. And his argument was the interaction and all that kind of stuff. And obviously their concern was me having a protected turn with the Trinisphere, to which I told them, I was like, I do not currently have the win in hand. Obviously, I think we literally did the math. I was like, I think I have 6 draws in my deck that give me the win right now. And we go to my turn with the Trinisphere Protection, where obviously then their interaction does not work because they're both tapped out, and I top deck Finale Devastation, which I was able to Finale Devastation for Trophy Mage to get the combo going. So I was able to win on that turn in a protective fashion. I stand by what I said, though, where I genuinely think that was correct to hit the Blood Chiefs, because otherwise your interaction doesn't work anyway. So I don't know.
Yeah,
it feels better to leave the Trinisphere, hope that I don't top deck a win, and then you get back to your turn at 14 life with a full grip on Sisei, which can probably get you there. You know what I mean? Because Sisei, once it starts doing its thing, it doesn't actually need to cast any more spells. So
yeah, just activation.
It's a close one. Point. But it was definitely a very tough decision point, for sure. So I don't want to give credit to that. But so I was able to win round 3, and I went into round 4 2-1. Round 4, we decided to take an intentional draw, just take a break, relax a little bit. We were all at 10 points. It was pretty comfortable to do so. And then going into round 5, because of the way tiebreakers were, where I'd been against Priscilla round 1, who had a bunch of wins. Some of the other people that I had played in round 1 and round 2, I'd been able to get a couple wins. I was absolutely doing fantastic on opponent win percentage tiebreakers. So I was the top of the 11s. I was like number 7 overall going into round 5. And so I was like, perfect. I can just ID again, go relax. We were like setting up Christmas decorations here for the, when I got here, we cut down a Christmas tree in the mountains and hiked it all out and stuff. And so we were setting all that up and I was like, okay, great. I can go like spend some time with them and do that. So I was totally down to take the draw. And for some fucking reason, I got paired down, like atrociously paired down. From being the top 11. I got paired up against 2 10s and a 7, which is kind of crazy. Happen. So I was pod 5 and 1, 2, 3, and 4 all ID'd immediately and like didn't play at all. And so I was like, you gotta be fucking kidding me, because I knew I wasn't getting in at 11 points. So I was like, okay, gotta try, I guess. Luckily, I was on the play. Very fortunately, I was on the play again. So my 4 games I played were 4th, 1st, 4th, 1st. And this game was an interesting game. It was apparently the stream game, which no one informed us it was the stream game. We had no idea it was streamed the entire time. But it was me on Kinnan in 1st seed. It was Paco Halden in 2nd seed. It was oh god, who was 3rd seed? Let me check real quick. I believe it was Blue Farm. Yeah, Blue Farm in 3rd seed, and then we had Corvald coming up the rear in 4th seed. And this was very much Corvald's game, where they did really well. Which I always say, I'm like, Corvald, Sisse, Dargo Thras, like the dockside decks are the decks that if I'm in 4th seed, I'm like, that's the deck you're happy to be in 4th seed almost, because you can take advantage of being in 4th seed the best. So I definitely had my eye on Corvald there. I'm not going to like slack on that deck just because it's in 4th. And they got off to a pretty strong start. I was able to land a pretty early Ristic study, and that was why I kept the hand. I believe I mauled pretty low and just like hit the Ristic and was like, that'll work, baby. Yeah, I mean, the game ended up divulging into kind of interaction battles and a lot of politics. And I ended up needing to politic really, really hard here because I didn't have anything going on, but I had a lot of cards in hand. And so people assume you're the threat. And so like Corvald hit me, and I was dead to the next Corvald attack. And so I had to have a conversation where I was like, I'm not doing anything right now. Like, are you going to hit me next turn or like whatever? And so we kind of like had some political conversations about that to like try and stay alive. And I was like, all I have is interaction, to stop the other people and what they're doing, blah, 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 blah. We get to a position where then Blue Farm has a Bowmasters and they're like trying to ping down my board. And I literally, in the video, you see me, I revealed my entire hand of like 9 cards to the table. I was like, this is what I got. Do you see this as mattering at all? And he was like, nope. And so they started pinging other people's shit. So I was like politicking very, very intensely this game. It wasn't anything gaslighty. It wasn't anything lying. It was all just like, this is what I have. I'm not the active threat right now if you want to deal with things in this game. And I had to be doing that to try and stay alive because I was dead to any Corval attack. I was dead to like anyone doing anything. So I was pushing really hard and like revealing my interaction as a way of also like stalling the game a little bit and just being like, if you go for it, I have the answer here, blah, blah, blah. So it ended up going on for quite a while. I ended up needing to get a flying blocker on 1 turn, so I finale'd for 2 to get a flesh duplicate to enter the battlefield as a copy of the Corval. So I had a flying blocker, and then I was able to draw 2 cards because I also had a fetch land in hand. I ended up drawing like cards that could win the game the following turn, but we ended up having large interaction battle on Corvald's turn and Blue Farm's turn when they were kind of going for things. We pushed really hard. Like Corvald, man, that deck could just go. He had like no cards in hand, and he was just going for shit. It's kind of wild how resilient it is. And I was looking at a hand that I was like, damn, if this game doesn't go to time and it gets back to my turn, like I have the win in hand now, so that would be pretty cool because then I would go in as like the 2 seed in the top 16. But we ended up going to time. So then once we were going to time, we're like, all right, let's get this game to a draw. So we just used all our interaction to make sure that he couldn't get there. And then the game ended up being a draw. Yeah, very, very, very heavy political game, but not in a way that was stressful and toxic and like really tiring. It wasn't one of those like hard, intense arguing games. It was very much like a political conversation game where everything was a very reasonable discussion of what is actually the current threat at the table. Like, I really wish the game audio for that game existed because I think it would be a great video for a lot of people to watch, to hear just like calm, respectful, good politics between all four players, where everyone is discussing different interactions and what they think should be hit for these reasons, and different information from some players being revealed to say, like, this is why I can't go for this. This is why this is here. These are the current problems. This is what's most likely to work right now. These are our priorities. Like, it was a very conversation heavy game, but it was a really healthy conversation heavy game. And I think that would be a really cool one for people to watch. I don't know if someone recorded that. I'm probably going to check with those guys, because I think that would be a really good one to post and have people look at.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes all you have is your mouth. Like, that's all you can do is, like, talk your way. Like, here's why I have value. Here's why you want me to stay around. And you stay in the game by proving yourself as helpful to the table. So at that point, you're not like gaslighting people. You're not trying to steal a win. Your goal is just to stay alive, and you do that by being someone that they want to stick around. Right? You have to, play that role at that point. And sometimes you get lucky. Sometimes you draw a couple cards here or there, and you find yourself back in the game, and you find a win. But those in my mind, those are very healthy games, right? Because the politics are not about, like, here's how I can trick you. It's like genuine, like, please let me stay in this game. And here's what I can offer you in terms of just being a valuable member of the table, right? And I think and
that's the power of revealing your hand.
Yeah,
that really is the power, because that did two things for me. It showed deterministically that I was not a threat, because obviously my hand had nothing close to a win in it. It had like Void Winnower and shit when I had like 5 mana, so I was just like this isn't doing anything right now. They even said, they were like, oh, you have a Nezahal. I was like, I have 5 mana. What the fuck am I doing with a Nezahal? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It also showed a revealed Force of Will and Dispel.
Right.
And then with the active Rhystic study on board, when they were like, oh, maybe we start pinging Kinnan with these Bowmasters, I'm like, well, if you would like to turn off my Fierce Guardianship that I may draw and stuff like that, like, go for it. But I also was able to point and say, I have 0 mana sources that are increased by Kinnan at this time. I have only 5 lands. So Kinnan's not actually doing anything. Hitting the Kinnan is only turning off potentially more interaction.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm definitely going to hit them up for those games. If we can find that recording, I'll try and get it on YouTube, and I'll put it in the description below. If I can't find it, I'm sorry. But I think that was a really good game to show, like, good politics, good discussion, good healthy play.
Yeah, makes sense. So one more round,
and
of
then
Swiss,
we
right?
went to top 16.
Oh, was that the last?
No,
round
that
of
was
Swiss?
round 5.
Oh, okay, that was round 5.
Yeah, that was round 5.
Yeah.
Where some of the players, I think it was the Pucker Halden player, seemed a little upset because there was so much politics that I guess it kind of stalled the game a little bit, so it did go to a draw in time, which, at the same time, at that point, it's like I was able to probably win on my next turn if we played that at the time, and if not, like, then my turn would have been the one that goes to time almost certainly, because I had enough game actions to take. So, like, it was going to a draw either way. And when I'm having these conversations with people, it is in no way with the goal of stalling for time. I think there was a little bit of interpretation that may have been what I was going for, because I was the only one who gets into top 16 with a draw, so a draw was kind of like a win for me. But yeah, that is definitely in no way what I was intentionally trying to do. It was just trying to stay alive and keep the game continuing to not just die immediately. But yeah, so I go into top 16, and unfortunately, because I had that game where I got paired down and one of the players was only at 7 points, that did hurt my opponent win percentage. So I dropped a few slots compared to other people who were at my same point range because of that, when I would have been above them. So I think I might have gone in, if I had gotten like paired normally, I might have been the 8 seed, which might have made me be second in turn order. But because I got paired down and my opponent win percentage dropped, I was the 11 seed on tiebreakers, which made me 3rd seed in my pod. And my pod was Cowboy Bob on Tivit on the play. It was Corey, well-known player who's like done well with Rogsai and Dihada in the past, on Thrasios Akiri in 2nd seat, myself on Kinnan in 3rd seat, and then a Sisse player who ended up winning the game and made it to top 4 in 4th seat. It was his first tournament ever, I believe, or his first online event. So incredible props to him. He did absolutely fantastic. And this game was super weird and a little bit scuffed. And I had conversations with the players after the game. It was my 3rd top 16 in a row between Top Deck Series, Chaos, and now this, where I have mulled to 4, which has felt pretty bad and is starting to get a little bit annoying, honestly. There were a lot of hands that I kept on Saturday that were like 7s and 6s, and that felt really, really good. And it's super disappointing when just 3rd tournament in a row that it's the game that matters the most, and my deck is just not giving me anything. And it's not me hunting and being greedy. Like, I would happily keep a playable mid hand that I could just distrust, especially in that like very mid-range pod. I'd be more than happy to keep just a mid hand that's not trying to do anything quickly, but I just couldn't get anything. I ended up keeping a hand that was 2 lands, a Mox Diamond, and a Springleaf Drum, which is garbage. Absolutely garbage. So yeah, I mean, I end up Tivit, I guess, really is what dominated this game, and that's what we need to shout out here. Where Tivit's turn 1 on the play was in first 7, by the way, he kept. Which also that's important. So Tivit kept first 7. Corey on Thrassakiri and Sisse both kept 5, and I mulled a 4. So we all mulled low, and Tivit kept first 7. And Tivit's first 7 went Ancient Tomb, Talisman, Soul Ring, Arcane Signet on turn 1. I was like, okay. And then turn 2, they go Tivit into Dauntless Dismantler, which fucks all 3 of us. It's a really good piece against all 3 of us with the artifact stuff. And then turn 3, they shoot out a win attempt with a Beseech the Mirror. Turn 4, they end up like Vampiric Tutoring. And then for the Time Sieve, they land the Time Sieve, and it gets he takes an extra turn. And we had a conversation on the previous turn after the Beseech the Mirror, where Corey played a Besage was landed, and I immediately was like, take that shit back. Take that shit back. You can take back land drops, which you can. Nothing has happened. You can take back land drops. I said, take that shit back. And he goes, bro, it's my only land. Because he hit an Invasion of Ikoria off of a Ragavan that he really wanted to cast. And I was like, bro, I understand that you want to get this dockside. I know it is what your deck is based around. But situationally, there was a Dauntless Dismantler. You are not using these treasures right now. Tivit has so much advantage right here. The odds that we are about to lose to Time Sieve is so high. The Seiju is the piece that saves us. We are all so low on cards. There is no way that any of us are going to be able to put up a win attempt except for Tivit, and that is probably the only answer that any of us have. And we had this conversation for a couple minutes. I was able to convince him to pick up the Beseju and keep it in his hand, and he passed the turn. And the following turn, Tivit vamped for Time Sieve, drew Time Sieve, played Time Sieve, and he Beseju'd it, and he was like, oh yeah, I forgot you guys talked about the Beseju all last turn. So that was kind of funny. So luckily, thank God we had the Beseju, or we just lost right there. And so because he was able to land the Time Sieve and activate it, though, he did get an extra turn. And he draws for turn, goes to combat, makes some clues, cracks a couple clues, and he hits a Demonic Consultation. And this is where I've had some conversations with different people about this, and there's different opinions. I personally would not have cast it. You are in such a dominant position in this game. All of us have no cards in hand. You have like 15 fucking mana on board. You're drawing additional cards every turn. You are so ready to dominate this game and just grind it out. There's no reason in my mind.
Yep.
On time around, there's literally no reason to take a game-losing risk. And I understand that the risk also means you win immediately, and I get that. And that's why some people, when I've asked them if they would cast this Demcon, they've said, yeah, you shoot that shot there. That's a high enough percentage play that you shoot that shot. And so he cast Demonic Consultation, naming Savin's Reclamation. And Savin's Reclamation was 4th or 5th from the bottom, which meant that he did not have enough cards in library to kill us out with combat. Mm-hmm. And he was a little tilted, and he ended up, like, all of his win cons were clearly gone, and he obviously cannot win the game. He was a little bit tilted, which is understandable in that situation of just, like, obviously you had to win there, and you kind of tossed it. So he did end up going to combat and hitting us 4 more times, and then just dying. On the last attack, after he drew his last card, and he was like, he went to swing at me, and I was like, bro, you are dying right now, right? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, then don't fucking do anything else in this game. Like why hit our life totals down? There's literally no purpose. Fortunately, it didn't end up mattering in the end, which I am happy about. If those life totals did end up mattering in this game, I would be like a little more upset looking back on those 4 attacks between the various people that he hit here. Wouldn't have been the coolest thing to do. But he ends up dying. He just scoops it up there. Doesn't even bother like going to his following turn and drawing or anything, because obviously he has no way to win the game. We go to Thrassakiri's turn. I think they play like a Ranger Captain or something. Pass to me. I top deck a Mox Opal. Really importantly, the Dauntless Dismantler is gone. So I play the Mox Opal. I'm completely hellbent. I had 6 mana on board here, which even on a previous turn to try and get to a Kinnan activation, I tried to crop rotation into Ancient Tomb because I was at 6 mana, and that gets me to 7. And fucking Tivit had the Oppo. Like, they just had everything the entire game to deal with anything we did. So he took my Cradle. And yeah, so I was there on I think 5 or 6 mana, and I play the Mox Opal, and I'm like, I'm literally hellbent. I might as well spin Kinnan, and I hit Seedborn. Seaborn Muse. And I was like, let's go, baby. End up spinning on their turns, and I just hit, which by the way, really importantly, Sisei had a Dockside that they played really early in the game just to ramp something out. And then they had Amanatu, but Bruce Thrasios had a Draneth, so they didn't have access to Sisei. And immediately once I hit the Seedborn, Corey was kind of freaking out. He was like, you're just going to win this game so quickly. And I was like, there's literally no way for me to win the game here through Kinnan activations. Because looking at the board's situation, it was, I'm Hellbent. And Kinnan activations can't get me the dub except for exactly like Hallbreaker Tidespout and drawing a card that I can cast. In that exact, if I hit exactly that, there's like a way, but the Kinnan activations themselves can't get me to a dub. Unlike you look like a deck like Time, and the activations actually get you to the win and go infinite with themselves. So I was like, that can't happen. And the best hits here that could potentially get me there are like Consmix and Nezahal. But if I draw the cards, Sisei has a Bowmasters, you know, and if Sisei has a Bowmasters, then my Kinnan dies, and then I don't have enough mana. So it's like no matter what here, I can't win through Kinnan activations. I'm like, look at Sisei, dude. He has a Rhystic Study, he has a Bowmasters, he has a Dockside, and he has an Amanatu. Like, that is absolutely a game-winning situation. And they had, like, 5 cards in hand. So I was like, they have the cards, they have the pieces, they have a win on board if there isn't this Draneth. And, you know, we end up talking about this stuff for a second. We go to my following turn. I draw Tidespout Tyrant, which was huge. Unfortunately, I, like, didn't have another spell in hand to start the loop. I absolutely would have just shot the shot there. Actually, I guess I couldn't have because there was a Ranger Captain, so I knew I couldn't. But I did spin on my turn. I hit a Gilded Drake. And, unfortunately, Amanatu is worded as exile target permanent you own. Yes. So I was going to take one of their things, and then I was like, I actually can't do that. They just get it back, which is super frustrating because I was going to take their Dockside. So I was like, okay, I ended up, so then I told Corey, I was like, I need you to hit this Amanatu, so I'm going to take your Draneth, just so you have a Gilded Drake, because I had to target something. But I was like, just so you have a Gilded Drake, so you can hit this Amanatu. Sisei untaps, I guess draws a Wishclaw, and doesn't even need to remove the Draneth. They just Wishclaw for a meal, and then was able to go infinite with the Dockside, and then infinitely blink the Blowmaster to win the game. And the one kind of mistake here was Corey on his previous turn cast an Esper Sentinel for like kind of no real reason, because we're all essentially hellbent there. And unfortunately, casting the Esper Sentinel took him off of mana for Otawara, which if he had the Otawara, then that game would have continued. So a little bit of a feels bad there, but that game was kind of just scuffed in my mind from the minute Tivit cast the Demonic Consultation, because that, like, he absolutely should have won that game. That
this
was
is something I've seen happen.
Showing for Tivit.
I've seen Tivit have this problem before. In fact, my friend Poncho, we went to Festival of Nights, and he was on Tivit. He had a game that went almost exactly like that, where he had everything, had total control of the game, had the Demonic Consultation for Savins. It wasn't Savins, it was for Time Sieve in this case. But he went for Time Sieve, and it was just too far down in the deck, and he didn't have enough cards left to win the game.
Yeah. And that's one of the risks within that deck. Like, Demonic Consultation in that deck is worse than others because you need to have a number of cards in library to be able to win the game.
Yep. 100%.
So it's difficult.
Yeah.
It's very difficult.
So who won that game? It was so
Sisei did. Yeah, Sisei did, because then they played the Wishclaw. They tutored for the Emil. And like Corey was arguing over the Wishclaw, and I was like, do you understand that he's winning right now? like that conversation doesn't matter. And yeah, he got Emil and won the game. And yeah, I mean, it hurt a little bit because, you know, I had such high hopes for the day, and my flip on Sisei's upkeep, because I had no cards in hand I could cast, so there was no reason to not spin on upkeep because I had no card advantage or anything. So spin on upkeep, I hit it Nezahal. And hitting the Nezahal meant that I was able to draw a couple cards, and like the first one was a Mox Opal, or Mox Amber. So I was like, oh, like
here we go. Get to my turn. Very good.
I do win on my next turn. So it hurt a little bit after just like another long day, another top 16, and another not conversion to top 4 on another shitty multifor when I like again kind of had a win in hand. It's starting to get a little feels bad here. I don't know. I've been considering playing Ob Nixilis for Chaos. I've told some people that I was going to, but I still think Kinnan gives me the best chance, and I really want to give the deck another go around, I think. So I think I'm probably going to end up playing Kinnan there. But yeah, I mean, not unhappy with the day, just unsatisfied, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get it.
Where there's a little bit of a difference there. Yeah, like I'm still, I'm always proud of the performance. It was my 10th top 16, which is a nice milestone for playing for, I guess, now 7 months. But yeah, would have liked to make it farther. And it was one of those days where I woke up and, like I said, a bunch of people messaged me saying, today's your day, I can feel it. And then just not live it up to that, always hurts a little bit. But then the finals, I do need to shout out the finals because number one in Swiss is a buddy of mine. His name is Jay. He goes on Discord as like Nick Foles Goat. And he is the guy back when we did our trick and treat and we talked about Jensen Luris. He was the list I was talking about where like one of my first ever games on Play to Win Discord was against him with his Jensen Luris deck that is like absolutely his baby. And he had a previous top four with Jensen Luris back in February. And yeah, he absolutely dunked on the Swiss, went undefeated. He was messaging me after every game like, man, just got him, just like had it this game. Everything was going clean, everything was going perfect. It was his fucking day, dude. Number one in Swiss, dunked on his top 16, was the first person to win his top 16 match. Goes into the finals game and like almost pulled off just one of the coolest victories I've seen in a while. You know, he's looking at a board where he has his Hermit Druid on board. There's an Agatha's Soul Cauldron on board. There's one active Deathrite on board. There's another Deathrite that's summoning sick on board. So that obviously shuts down his lines. He has the Priest of Felrites already on the battlefield too. And I guess the table had been taught. Oh, and he had a Haywire Might. And the table had been talking, and the table was like, oh, he can't go for it. We have the Soul Cauldron. And just none of them were reading Haywire Might at all. And so, you know, you get to the Sisay players cheering because the finals went Jay on Jensen Luris, into Priscilla on Crom Rayhan, into, which was like a super mid-range list. It wasn't even running Calling Ritual, which is very interesting to me. Into Sisay in third seat, Unrivaled, into Sisay in fourth seat, who was the Sisay that won our game and was his first tournament. And, you know, he went to like tap his Deathrite and Priscilla goes, no, we fucked up. You can't tap your Deathrite and you can't tap your green source. And he was like, why? And he goes, he has a Haywire Might. That can hit the cauldron. We need your Deathrite. And so she convinced him to essentially time walk himself. And when he said it, Nick Foles was just like, you saw it. Apparently this game was like very positive. All of them had a really fun time. It was like a very, very like chill, enjoyable pod. No sweatiness at all. Like everything I've heard about that game from all the players who've talked about it was like nothing but positive and enjoyment, which is always super nice to hear as well, that these games are like not too stressful and politicky and people getting upset and salty. So I really like to hear that, just like fun, casual communication, because that's definitely something I always strive for in my tournament games is like making it an enjoyable game environment. But so even with the Deathrite held up, Jay goes to his turn. He activates the Haywire Might to hit the Soul Cauldron, and he ends up just saying fuck it, and he activates the Hermit Druid. And he has a few very important cards in his graveyard that he can flash back as well. His deck is really designed for Hermit Druid. And so one of them is Cabal Therapy, which is the sacrifice a creature to cast a spell card. And not only is this super important for that, he also had an Esper Sentinel on the battlefield. And Cabal Therapy sacks his cost, so it gives no window where someone can make you draw a card off the Esper, which is super important because you would die to being decked out. So he immediately flashes back the Cabal Therapy, sacrificing the Esper Sentinel. He targets Priscilla, and I talked to him after the game. He was going to name Flusterstorm because he knew he needed to use his deflecting swat that he had in hand for the Deathrite. And so he was like, I do fold here to certain pieces of interaction. He figured Flusterstorm was the most scary. Priscilla ends up deflecting swatting the Cabal Therapy back to him, which is fine because you don't choose the card name on cast, you choose it on resolution. So that's fine. Just lets him name a card that he doesn't have, but it also does make him reveal his hand, which is important because now the table gets to see what he's working with. This man has Force of Will, he has Deflecting Swat, he has Offer You Can't Refuse, he has a blue card to pitch to the force. Like, he is stacked with interaction here. This was like absolutely no qualms with going for this one attempt. And so, you know, he activates the Priest of Felrites, targeting Nathas's Oracle. One of the players casts a Deflecting Swat. He casts, activates the Deathrite. Jay casts Deflecting Swat. Someone else has some counter. He has to use the Force of Will. He has to use the Offer You Can't Refuse. You know, someone Mind Break Trap it. Like every piece of interaction out of everyone's hand. It was an enormous, long, incredible stack battle full of card draw and back and forth, and it was really, really cool to watch. Meanwhile, I'm in the chat like pumping up and rooting for Jay the whole time. Like if you go back and watch the stream, you see me posting blocks that say J like 100 times, which it was really cool. We had a bunch of people from the Play to Win Discord like in there hyping him up because we really wanted him to get this one. He totally deserved it. And you know, after all these interaction battles are done and the last thing is on the stack and everyone's like, do you guys have fucking anything? And the person goes, I guess I have to nuke myself to make sure we don't lose the game. And they cast the last thing, which is Demonic Consultation. So Priscilla in second seat, cast Demonic Consultation, exiles most of her win cons, but not all of them, gets the Fierce Guardianship, hits Jay's deflecting spot. The Thassa's Oracle is exiled, and the game from that position is essentially over for him, which was really sad to see. Always, like, it does hurt more to get got by the Demcon, because you know a lot of the time someone else is sacrificing their ability to win the game to stop you, and that is what happened. Where Priscilla, if she hadn't done that, I believe would have been able to win on her next turn, but because she had used the Demonic Consultation, which I think was part of some deal as well, to lose her ability to win next turn. She had to pass, and the following Sisay player unrivaled, untapped, and just passed, and everyone was like really surprised. They're like, "Wow, that was your window, man. Why did you not go for it?" And it was because the next Sisay player throws an Ashiok on the stack, the one that doesn't let you search your library, which obviously dunks on the other Sisay deck. And the other Sisay player goes, "Sounds cool. I'm going to flash in this Teferi that lets me cast my creatures at flash speed," and then does an entire instant speed line on top of the Ashiok to win the game. And that was why they were able to just pass. So a really cool game. Really enjoyable game to watch. What sounds like it was a really enjoyable game to play. Really good back and forth, really good interaction, really healthy game, and a really cool win to finish it out. So props to Unrivaled for finishing, and huge round of applause for Jay. Obviously, I love you, buddy. Like, super proud of everything you accomplished. Obviously, we've talked a bunch of times. I don't need to say it too much on here, but everyone's super proud of you, and you did so incredible on Saturday.
Yeah, I was happy to see Unrivaled win. Chico, we call him Chico, but I played against him a whole bunch. On the Nexus server. He's from Portugal, really cool guy, really fun to play with. So I was happy to see him take one down. So congrats to him as well. Crazy tournament.
Definitely.
The meta, if we shift to the meta of the tournament, really different than what we've seen in the last couple months. It's like the March of Sisay. It's crazy. More Sisays than I've seen in a long time. I mean, Sisay is always kind of ever present as a significant portion of the meta, but this is like crazy. 12 entries, and 4 of the top 16 are Sisay.
Yeah, 4 top 16s. That is kind of crazy.
That's bonkers, man.
Which the top 16s for this tournament, you had 4 out of 12 entries for Sisay. You had 2 out of 14 entries for Tim Krom, and then you had 1 out of 1 for Jensen, 1 out of 1 for Krom Rayhan, 1 out of 5 for Tivit, 1 out of 2 for Tevish Thras, 1 out of 2 for Akiri Thrasios, 1 out of 4 for Dargo Thras, 1 out of 1 for Najila, and myself being the 1 out of 9 for Kinnan. Oh, and 1 out of 2 out of Kenrith, and 1 out of 9 for Rogthai, which I believe was Surge.
Well, here's some...
Which cool to see.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, remember, I think it was like 1 or 2 tournaments ago, it might have been Mythic Lotus series we were talking about, or the last Chaos, and Rogthai only had 1 entry, and it was kind of wild to see it only have 1, and we were like, wow, that's crazy. And now you're back with Rogthai having 9 entries, tied for third most.
Yeah, which is what I think I think this is what we're gonna see most of the time is these top 5 decks are going to be the top 5 decks almost all the time. But there are some interesting numbers here. Like, there were 3 Gyruda decks, 3 entries.
Only 1 Najila.
Only 1 Najila. Najila continues to decline. Which I can't imagine will continue. At some point, people have to realize, maybe Najila is pretty good. We should actually pick that deck up again. And it did make top 16. So
yeah, you do see a little boost in Krom Tevish.
Yes.
Probably because of how Ian's been doing with that deck. Which I am curious, if we take a quick look at the deck, we'll look at Williams, who did go 2-3, won 2 out of his games. Is he closer to the mid-range plan, or is he closer to the turbo plan? He is running Talion.
This looks pretty mid-range to me.
Yeah, he is on the 1 ring, so this is closer to Ian's list for sure.
Yeah.
Overall. Yeah, he's on the Ledger Shredder. This is very close to Ian's list. Yeah, so he did choose to go the more mid-range overall plan. Let's look at just one other of the Tevish Krom decks that came next up in turn there. Yeah, and you see Italian, again you see a 1 ring. Do you see Ledger Shredder?
Yeah.
No. Yeah, this one, but you're seeing more of the card advantage engines, less of the turbo. So these decks are not. Oh, this one is okay. So this one actually, Jay's is, I would say, a little bit closer to in between Comedian and Sharkies, because Comedian took out stuff like Necro and some of the wheels, and this is a deck that's on the wheels, on the Necro, but also on the card advantage pieces, and not on some of the more cute things like Ledger Shredder. So this one's a bit in between.
Okay.
But definitely going to see a generic increase in Krom Tevish, I think, since it's been performing pretty well lately. And you have a bunch of decks here that are kind of showing up a little bit more that are cool to see. There were 4 Italian entries. There were 3 Garuda entries. You see, we're back on a little bit of time. I think Pixel and Tuca were playing it again. I don't know who the third person was, but 3 entries of that. You see 3 entries of Winota. Flashback to the summer, you maybe, if any, saw 1 Winota in the entire tournaments. You get 3 Bruce Thrasios. You get 3 Timna Kodamas. It's surprising to see. 3 Shurikais. We're in a very diverse meta right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's cool to see. It's cool to see. I appreciate that. Cause,
what's going on with Kinnan, man? Kinnan has really kind of fallen off all of a sudden.
Yeah, I wish some other Kinnan pilots were showing up a little more. I like the tournaments that we get like 3 Kinnan top 16s. You know what I mean? But here, it's not a single other Kinnan deck got more than 1 win.
Yep, you're right. It's really fallen off in terms of wins. Like you're kind of the only one put up the numbers. Although what was the last, like if you look at the last couple tournaments, so Lotus Series 1, we had, was it just
we had in Lotus Series?
Yep, only you.
Well, no, I wasn't in.
You weren't in that. Yeah.
I wasn't in Lotus Series.
Yeah, that's right.
I wasn't in
it
that.
was Nick.
So that one you had, you had Nick doing well, but you also had TK doing well. Oh wait, no, this is Lotus Series 1. I was in. We're talking about Path to the Peak. Yeah. So Lotus Series 1, I was in there. I missed top 16 on that one.
Right. So right, but El Dorito made it.
But
so,
Nick did really well.
Nick made it.
El Dorito made it to top 4. Yeah. Path to the Peak, which was, I have to adjust the tournament size. I think 250 here, and it'll show up. Path to the Peak 2. I'm curious how many there were in this like smaller meta, because that was a very stacks heavy meta. It was very interesting. Meta for Path to the Peak 2. You have 5 Kinnan entries, which was TK doing very, very well with the deck, going 2-2 and finishing as 8th overall, and then other people not really performing on the strategy, including Sean Wiley, who was the guy who top forward the first Path to the Peak. So obviously a very, very competent pilot there.
Yeah. And going back as far as Treasure Series 8, same situation. Only one making top 16 was you, though you got Sean Wiley and you got Nick there, right there, just not quite making it. But it's kind of the same 3 or 4 pilots on representing Kinnan, like in every tournament at this point.
That's how Kinnan is, though. It really is one of those decks that, a lot of people have been asking me, like, oh, would you recommend this to a newer player? I'm building a deck for my girlfriend. I even had this conversation yesterday. Like, would you recommend your Kinnan list? And I say, honestly, no. For 2 reasons. And people say like, oh, Kinnan is one of those decks that like really rewards the competent pilots, but it's for 2 primary reasons. And I think the most successful Kinnan decks right now, if you look at them, are often on a more mid-range control-based strategy. That's not entirely true. I think Sean Wiley's is a little bit closer to mine. El Dorito's is a little more combo focused, so his doesn't fall into this category as much. But when you're playing a more control-based strategy, having really solid knowledge of your opponent's decks and what they're doing and how the interactions work always is very rewarded, because you need to understand, do I do something proactive? Do I two-drop Manglehorn, Wandering Cake, whatever piece is going to mess up my opponents the most to continue the game and grind out that advantage plan? And secondarily, I've had this conversation with a few people lately as well. There was an article I got told about that was written for Legacy about, I think it was like 10 years ago, where it was someone saying, what is the hardest Legacy's decks to play and why? And the one he had as number 1 was Death and Taxes. And it's not because Death and Taxes is this impossible thing to pilot, but it's because Death and Taxes has a lot of very unique, specific interaction points that you have to decide on. And that knowledge from how those interactions work doesn't translate over to other things in the format. And I think that reflects very similarly with Kinnan, where Kinnan is full of all of these very unique interactions and decision points that don't translate to learning other decks or any other part of the format. If you're playing Rogsai and you're doing breach lines, that knowledge of how your breach lines work translates over to if you're playing Blue Farm, Najila, Ikrakrom, whatever random breach deck. Lots of these turbo strategies, Necropotence, all of these different plans, whatever you're on in CDH, even stacks plans. Like, there's a lot of carried over knowledge where I did this with this deck and I know I can do that very similarly with this deck. Kinnan is full of very unique interactions, very unique decisions that are just unique to Kinnan. And that knowledge doesn't carry over into any other type of piloting. Like, obviously, piloting any CDH deck will make you better at CDH in general. I'm not saying it does nothing for it, but compared to how playing other decks helps you with certain other decks, like Kinnan's very unique knowledge. And I say the same thing about like Sisay. Like, Sisay is very unique knowledge to know your Sisay lines.
Right.
Knowing your Sisay lines is not going to help you do anything else in the format.
Right.
And Kinnan's kind of the same way. So it's not the easiest beginner deck. And when people say like, oh, well, if they want to play Kinnan, what would you recommend? I say, start something more proactive focused. Like start something that is more about pushing your proactive combos. And then as you learn the format, focus on stopping your opponents more, I would say is the way to go about that. But so yeah, I mean, Kinnan's a hard deck to pilot. And so, there's some decks where, Crom Tevish has done really, really well lately, and people want to pick up that deck, and the interaction points and how to focus and play Crom Tevish has a lot of overlap to other decks you've played in CDH probably. So that's the kind of strategy that people can say, this has been doing well, I can pick it up and I can probably perform with it. Blue Farm, the same idea. A lot of people pick up Blue Farm because it's the best. Kinnan is one where if you say,
Grixis has its its lines that are pretty much common to every Grixis deck you play, with some uniqueness, some personal choice here and there, but for the most part, the lines through Breach are going to be the same thing. The lines through Thassa's Oracle are going to be the same thing. How you get there may differ, but the end game is the same. Simic Kinnan is unique, really, and the only other deck that's kind of similar in some ways and not always, I think, is Dawnwaker. Bruce Thrass, and even that is just a little bit of overlap, not that much, right?
Yeah. I would say probably Wild Pile is closer than Dawnwaker.
Sure.
Because Dawnwaker tends to be pushing more proactive combos, and Wild Pile, the way like Dan Brown has it built, is much more on that like play not to lose before you play to win type grind. I'm going to play my Okos and Manglehorns and such, and
but even difficult. There, the overlap is just very small. There's a little bit, but very little. Whereas you take one Grixis deck and compare it to another Grixis deck, and there's a huge amount of overlap. Right.
Yeah. I mean, even we joke about Florian and Omnixilis, but like either of us could
80% of the deck is the same.
Pilot it.
Right.
Just fucking fine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like we can play the other person's deck. Like we both did that at Top Deck. We played the other person's deck, and
in fact, other people were playing our decks, and we were giving each other advice. Like, oh, you're playing Florian, and Max would look over their shoulder and be like, you should do this. And then someone else was playing out decks, I'm like, you should do that. Like, and it's not even our decks, but we know the lines, right? Because they're similar. Yeah, Kinnan is unique. It doesn't have that in the meta right now. Yeah, but cool. Cool tournament. Interesting.
I will say, like just talking about the meta in a generic sense, though, we are seeing it slow down more and more and more.
100%.
We were in, I would say, this last like 2 months has kind of been a very mid-range meta, lots of heuristic study focus, really good time to just jam your wins early. But now, I mean, heuristically speaking, what tends to beat mid-range is stacks, and so we're leaning a little bit more towards, you're seeing more Shurikai, you're seeing more Winota come back, you're seeing Elevir become a little more prominent. But I don't think Elevir had actually want to check how many entries did Elevir have for Mox Masters. Control F. Elevir. Is it double L? Was it 0? No.
I'm looking for it.
Oh my god! Wait. Wild. Oh my god, there was 0 Elevir. Okay, never mind. No Elevir in this one. But like you see the Shurikais, you see Tivit really is kind of a stacksy control deck, which Tivit has a bunch of entries always. Like we are seeing it slow down more and more and more, and some of these decks that are trying to push these more static onboard effects are doing better and better and better, because when you're in that mid-range meta, that's what beats the mid-range. And as we're getting to the slower meta and people are trying to make the games go really, really long, what's going to start beating that is going really, really fast. And I think we're going to be circling back to turn order magic here soon.
Yeah, I think we're going to see more and more Sisay, and we'll see what new sets bring. I imagine there's going to be some interesting new commanders coming up in the next year. Hopefully, some that are fun turbo builds that are different than what we've seen. I would love that, but I think that's definitely coming. It's interesting because I mean, when I saw all of these Sisay decks make it to convert into the top 16 of this last tournament, I thought it had to be because of Kutzel, right? Because I just think Kutzel's like just such a powerful piece, in Sisay. But interestingly enough, if you look at Unrivaled's deck, he's not even running it.
Yeah, I mean, he is running the Teferi, though, which having flash speed can kind of work in the same way as the Silence, where like you can pick your window very clearly. Because you could just, flash in a Kutzel before your turn or something like that. But yeah, Sisay is one of those decks. It's not as much of a... I kind of do relate it to Time in the sense that it's a Brewer's Advantage deck, and you are often dunking on people's ignorance with how it works, and that's one of the reasons I'm not a huge fan of the deck overall. Though what I appreciate about Sisay, compared to other decks like Time, is it wins the game immediately. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When it does the thing, the game is just over. You don't have to sit there with this grueling bullshit for 30 minutes.
You have three. You have 2 activations. Oh, you have 3 activations. Yeah. We could scoop here. That's good.
GG's.
Yeah.
GG's.
Yeah.
Sisse is very good at just winning the game very confidently, and it does so. It's one of those. It is. I mean, when you're looking at these Brewers Advantage decks, which same thing I said about Kinnan, unique knowledge. I said Sicilians work the same way. Time work the same way. Like people are always like, "Oh, I don't understand how this deck works." That's why it does so well.
Yeah, 100%.
Because when you play in a pod of all people who understand how Sisse works, Sisse doesn't do so good.
Yeah,
Sisse really doesn't do so good in a knowledgeable pod. That's why I'm super impressed that it was able to get 2 people to convert to top 4. Obviously, my game was just like scuffed as shit. You know what I mean? Like that one was a little weird. It wasn't just.
Yeah, but he still found his way. He still piloted the deck to the win.
He found his way.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, you have the cards, you get there. But yeah, it's a very powerful deck. Sisse is a deck that needs to be respected more. I was on the Mind Sculptors recently, and I put it at number 10. And I still mentally feel good about putting it there, even after this tournament, putting it around number 10, just because. Like, if we're ranking the most powerful decks in the CDH, I personally don't rate Brewers Advantage decks as highly. Because if I'm rating the pure power of your deck, I'm imagining a good pilot on the deck, and I'm imagining that you're playing it against good pilots. And I don't think Sisse is as successful in those situations.
I mean, at this point, I have a hard time putting it out of top 5. I do. Because it's repeatedly in that top 5 category in every single tournament.
Fair.
So it's like, I if I was... my favorite CDH decks, it wouldn't make, top 5 at all. But if I have to be honest and say, based on the data and based on what we're seeing, what's the top 5 decks to play in CDH in tournaments? Sisse's got its place at the table. And it's really hard to argue against it at this point.
And 5 colors.
Yeah, and 5 colors is great. So
5 colors is strong.
Yeah.
Super, super strong.
Yeah. Lots of crutches.
Best Agatha Soul Calder deck.
Lots of crutches. Lots of crutches.
Lots of crutches, dude.
Yeah.
So many crutches.
Well, okay. Well, good. This was good. This was a good conversation. I think the meta is interesting. Now, we're at the end of 2023. I think there's only one more tournament, Chaos. We got Chaos, one more Chaos tournament coming up. Major tournament online.
Yeah, Chaos next Saturday.
And, the 16th.
Oh, then there's probably is there Path to the Peak during like Christmas weekend or no?
I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe. Yeah, but
maybe.
we're pretty much at the end of 2023. I don't see any major shifts happening over the next few weeks. So I think that's kind of it. So kind of parlays or goes right into our next conversation, which is what's coming up in 2024. What's going to happen next. And I'll put you on the spot. Like, what's your hot take? What's your bold prediction for 2024?
My hot take
in CDH. Yeah, what's going to happen?
My bold take, I don't know. Modern Horizons 3 is going to warp the format to the same level that Lord of the Rings did.
Yeah, I think that's pretty strong.
I could see as being a very probable thing. I think that set's going to be absolutely broken as shit because that's what they're printing nowadays. Every Modern Horizons is gross. So that one I think is going to be really, really good. I think we're going to see a lot of changes to the format there. I think we're going to see more CDH specific cards. I would say is definitely a prediction I have where they seem to be caring about us a little bit more and thinking about us just a little bit more. Even Comedian brought up, he was like, whoever's at Secret Lair obviously looks at CDH when you look at some of these Secret Lairs where it's like, oh, here's a Jessica, a Tevish, a Vile, and a Godo. Or there was one that was like Llanowar Elves Demonic Consultation and like two other one-drop CDH cards, whatever they were. Like, there's they're paying attention to CDH.
Well, there's no question the CDH community is like growing like gangbusters right now. I mean, the tournaments just keep getting bigger and bigger. I remember this time last year we were looking at like between 100 and 150 people being like crazy huge and like the biggest ever, and beyond what anyone expected. And here we are now, where we're over 200 people tournaments going on, and I'd expect that number to even grow. My prediction would be like I think we're going to see, a 300 plus person tournament in 2024. I think that's going to happen.
Do you think that would be organized? Do you think it would be organized where there would be like a cut to top 64 or something, and then a couple more Swiss rounds?
Yeah, and this is a little bit of a preview of what's to come. As we're hoping to talk to Mikey and Zane as well, and they have a lot of ideas about how to run bigger tournaments. And I did see, I don't remember where I saw it, but talking about 300 people being cut to top 32, I believe, instead of top 64, and then once it gets above like 500 people, then they're, like you said, top 64 cut.
Well, top 64 cut, if you did go down to one game at that point, does work out in the pods going down in multiples of 4, where there's a cut to top 64 that those games give you your top 16, and then those games give you your top 4. So that maps out appropriately, unless you wanted to do a thing where it was like you have your top 32 and then the top 16 like are already there, and then the other people are like fighting or something basically. Like that, or maybe like a top 8. Oh, that could work. Like a top 8 make it already, and then your last 8 get there from the other games, something like that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to talk to Mikey and Zane about it, because I know they've put a lot of thought into this already. So I look forward to that. But yeah, I think we're going to see the community continue to explode over the next year. Especially you look at things like Star City Games running CDH events. I think that's going to continue. Wizards is paying attention. They have to pay attention because there's a market and there's money to be made. So I think we'll see that.
Definitely. I mean, even just like I've been coaching more and more lately. Like a lot of newer players are hitting me up. It's very clear that a lot of people are getting into the format, like at a pretty incredible rate, which is awesome to see.
Yeah, absolutely.
Super, super awesome to see.
Yep. So, New Year's resolutions, like what do you want to? I mean, I know the obvious goal for you is like win on Kinnan, but what beyond that? That's too easy. What beyond that? Come on, what do you got?
Beyond that?
Yeah,
top 16 on another deck. Kind of like you did with Talion. I think that would be a good one for me. Like I do want to get a top 16 on Ob Nixilis, which I'm just waiting for the record. This is where I stand right now. When Max fucking puts his big boy pants on and agrees to play a tournament on Florian, then I play Ob Nixilis, and we see who makes it farther. That's when I'll play Ob Nixilis. I was gonna play next weekend, but I was like, no, if he's not gonna fucking put his money where his mouth is, where he was talking shit in the Colors of a Crutch Discord the other day, saying Max won't even play a tournament on Ob, and I immediately chimed in and said, you play Florian, I play Ob. Next week, let's see who does better. And he said, nah.
I wasn't the one who said nah. Someone else said nah. But I did say, like, I'm just not interested in doing that right now. Like, I have zero interest in playing Florian in a tournament right now. I'm really enjoying Talion. I want to keep playing Talion. Mm-hmm. As the year progresses and I win a couple tournaments.
How would you like if you shipped me Florian?
Well, I don't have to ship you. I mean, I'll bring it down to Atlanta. When we're there in January.
And then just hand it off to me, and I'll play a tournament on Florian. Yeah, you can play a
tournament on Florian. Yeah, if you want to.
Yeah, and I'll send it back.
Yeah,
that could be good.
Absolutely,
that could be a good one.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't know. It's very tough for me because my experience when I'm like playing Ob casually, obviously CDH games that are like still competitive, is it's either like I completely dunk on everyone and it feels amazing and the deck feels cracked and unstoppable because I'm doing everything Rakdos. But then there's these games that I do rely on the Ob plan and people do just hone in and make sure I don't have Ob, and like those games the deck feels pretty bad. And yeah, it's tough to think about winning a tournament without blue right now. I think is a huge thing that I've been talking about with some people. And if you look at EDH Top 16, and I did this if you just look at the main page or if you filter it to the last few months, it shows the exact same situation where all the top 10 decks are blue. And then in the top 20, you then get Tayam, Dihada, Ob Nixilis, and Timnatana as the only 4 decks in the top 20 that are all 12 and farther back that are not blue. And so you have 16 out of the top 20 decks that are blue.
There's just so much interaction available in blue. The decks that like Ob Nixilis, like Florian, that really want to turbo out wins and combo off and are really relying on, finding windows where your opponents just don't have any interaction left or win through interaction. It's harder and harder and harder. And there's just new toys. Like you keep getting new toys for blue. Like it's just more like Stern Scolding just came out. Like all these new like great counter magic pieces that shut down these turbo decks in a hard way. It's harder and harder to win. Plus the fact that you get these like the play pattern at this point is everyone's got a Rhystic Study, everyone's got a Mystic Remora. People got Talion in play. There's just so much draw going on at this point that it's really difficult for a deck without blue that doesn't have its own draw engine online to fight through all that. Ob obviously.
And the other,
go ahead. Yeah.
Well, the other important thing about these decks that don't have the card advantage, and when you have the card advantage in the interaction, when you're playing 12 counter spells or anything like that, you're sacrificing, usually at least 10 slots in your deck for interaction. Where these Rakdos decks or these Mardu decks and a lot of these very turbo win con focused strategies that don't have blue, those slots are all just using additional win conditions.
Right.
And so you often put yourself in positions where you're just continuously presenting win conditions until one of them sticks.
Right.
But the problem with that strategy that also happens in these blue, metas is where you're constantly presenting win conditions and you constantly get stopped, and you constantly getting stopped is just opening up these new windows for everyone else to win the game because you're forcing them to use their interaction.
Well, not only are you forcing them to use their interaction, but they're also drawing 10 cards off your win attempt, right? Because they've got a Ristic Study and you have to draw them cards.
I did set up a situation on Ob yesterday, actually, where I had Bowmasters and Obnixilis and like Kessig Flamebreather or whatever. So I was like casting a Mox Opal, getting an Ob trigger. They were drawing 2 cards off Mystic Remoras, and I was getting 2 more draws from the Bowmaster. And then probably 8 Ob triggers in, they were like, we should probably stop drawing.
That's funny.
They were like, I don't think we win this battle.
But the thing about decks like Obnixilis and Florian is they actually have excellent card advantage engines built into the command zone. But the difference between them and the blue decks is that their advantage is conditional, right? It's not just sit there and accrue value for free. And they're susceptible to Silver Bullets. They're susceptible to Drenith Magistrate, or other cards that make casting from exile impossible. Where blue doesn't have that limitation. So that's an imbalance that is very difficult to overcome when you're playing those decks. I'm not saying you can't do it. You can. I believe 100% that, if you a little bit of luck and a lot of skill, you can absolutely pilot Obnixilis and Florian, both of them to wins. But it's hard mode, just honest, it's hard mode compared to just turn one. I'll play a fish, boom.
Not having cards in hand. Another really important difference is that we're more telegraphed because they see what we take.
Yes.
Where when you exile off Florian, is it exile face down or face up? Face up. So same idea, like Obnixilis. There's so many games that someone gives me an Ob trigger on a fetch land on the turn, right after I go, and I flip Ad Nauseam off the top, and everyone's like, "Oh, we just got to nut up and do it." Yeah. And I often end up having to make a deal where I'm like, I will not cast the Ad Nauseam if you deal with this. You know what I mean? Because it's just I can't. I don't want to lose.
Yeah.
But being totally face up can be very difficult. But then it's also so fucking funny. So I got them really good yesterday, where I vamp tutored before I passed, and I knew I was going to get a Caderic Parasite trigger. And so I vamp tutored Deflecting Swat to the top. And then the Kateric Parasite trigger just flipped Deflecting Swat, and the guy's entire plan to not die was to kill my Ob. And he was just like, you gotta be fucking kidding me.
Yeah,
you
doing it now, buddy.
I was like, yeah. They
Get wrecked, nerd.
I did not see that one coming. Yeah, they did not see that one coming at all, dude.
Yeah. And those decks are fun. I'm not done with Florian by any stretch of the imagination, but I just don't have a desire to play it in a tournament right now. I want to play more Talion right now. I'm also messing around with Rogsai a lot and enjoying it. So,
I also think I'm going to build Rogsai.
Yeah, I'm really happy. I have it in paper at this point. I got to play it a bunch today. It's just ridiculously powerful, and a good time. A lot of the same, like you say, the overlap between that deck and other decks like that. Those turbo lines are just with Breach are just common and just a blast. They're just so fun to play.
One of the coolest wins I saw in a while was actually yesterday. My buddy Cart in the Play to Win Discord, he, I forget if it was Tainted Pact or Demonic. It was Tainted Pact. He Tainted Pacted his way to get his Ad Nauseam to resolve, and he lost all of his win cons in this Tainted Pact because he needed the Ad. And he was just like, I'm in too deep at this point. I'm not, because at that point it was like, I'm dead if I don't do this now. And he exiled almost everything. And the line this kid had to go on to get the dub was incredible, fighting through a few pieces of interaction too, where it ended up producing mana in these weird ways, and he was able to get a Breach, so he did have access to Breach, but Brain Freeze is gone, LED's gone, all of those things aren't there. He ended up Jessica's willing to make mana, and then continuously Jessica's willing until he could find Praetor's Grasp with Oracle. And it was so funny. I even he gambled for his fucking Praetor's Grasp, and I hit it on the 10 cards. He was just like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. So then he had to cast a Warrior's Oath just to get another card in his graveyard, so then he could cast the Praetor's Grasp again. It was on exactsies of mana to just Oracle Depcon.
Yeah, those games are so fun though, because you pivot and you pivot and you pivot again and you pivot again. Okay, that line didn't work. Okay, let's try this line. Okay, that didn't work. We'll try this line. And just the number of lines that Rogsai is able to go after in a single turn is just mind blowing. It's super.
We did we gave him some shit because he didn't pay for my fish when he had 32 red mana floating off of Jessica's Well.
That's That's hilarious. But he probably
Really?
needed all of it. He probably needed all 32 red, right? Because he had to keep trying.
He actually did get to a position that he couldn't pay anymore when he kept casting spells. Yeah, it did get a little
I believe it.
there.
100%.
It was super funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a great win. My only out that I had there, because I didn't draw a single piece of free interaction. I was literally had like 5 counter spells in my hand that all cost mana, and I was tapped out. So my only out was I kept crop rotation on hand, so I could Elvish Spirit Guide crop rot into a blue source to try and stop him, but I didn't hit it.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to playing all those decks in 2024. I'm also really hoping that early in the year, preferably, I want to see another interesting commander that I can brew on. Because that's one of my favorite things about this format is just brewing new decks.
Are there any card effects you see coming?
Any what?
Any card predictions you have? I have a couple that I think are going to happen this year.
No, you go yours first. I'll see what I can think of while you're doing that.
I think we're going to get something that's very similar to a red Flusterstorm.
Okay.
Not something like almost a Flusterstorm style deflecting SWAT effect. Not exactly, but something that works as like a red Flusterstorm that's better than Display of Power. Because we kind of got that with Display of Power, but I think we're going to get a more CDH playable version of a similar effect. Something that can deal with the whole stack in red. Very similar to Flusterstorm dealing with the whole stack, or Mindbreak Trap dealing with the whole stack. I expect to see a card similar to that in red, which I think will be a really fantastic thing for the format. I actually think that's a very good include and a very powerful playable card that won't be broken. And then I think we're going to get, how like there's the Lotho and Crom and...
second spell cards.
What is it called? Ledger Shredder.
Yeah.
All of these, like when your opponents do something like second thing, whenever a player does this thing, type effects and all these other colors, I think we're going to get something similar to that in green.
Okay, that actually makes
sense.
sense.
That will be.
I think
that will be really good.
I think we're going to see a lot of green cards in general because green got really neglected over the last 18 months. I mean, it's been pretty sad. White got rescued and taken care of. Blue has always been embraced and loved. Black is stable as always. Green just shat on. They've gotten almost nothing over the last couple of years, really. So I think we're going to see a lot of good green cards come out over the next year. I think we're going to see another cycle of channel cards or cycle that are CDH relevant. I think we'll see
so soon. Really?
Yeah, I do. I think so. I think it'll be like sort of summertime before we see it, but I think we will. Maybe it'll be cycle this time instead of channel, but same.
Well, they
difference.
are. Yeah, they are kind of doing that already. Where even you notice channel was a mechanic that was specific to Kamigawa, and so they did it there. But yeah, they've done cycling with effects before, where when you cycle, this happens, and then they've also done recently even trumpeting Carnosaur, whatever it's called, right. the dragon we talked about. They are adding these effects to cards that just say when you discard, do this. Just giving it these discard secondary spell and counterable effects that are so powerful because they are incredibly difficult to counter. But then they're also giving us all of these effects that counter them, like Tishana's now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I think we'll see. I also think we'll see battles again. I'm going to predict that in next year. I think we'll see battles again. I think that was a successful. I think it was a successful effect, successful card, type. I think it got picked up really well, and Wizards is always happy with that. Yeah, new card types are good. Yeah,
yeah, especially from Modern Horizons. I think is the kind of set that we'll see those types of effects more because Modern Horizons is a set that they've shown in the past. They don't give a fuck about keeping to any specific mechanics for any particular set. They will throw in any mechanic from any history of Magic, and that is where they just get to throw all their ideas together. So we could definitely see battles. We could definitely see channel. All of that is possible in Modern Horizons, and that's very exciting. I expect that to be just such a powerful set.
Yeah, and hopefully they get the Commander Legends right this time. Like last year, it was the Baldur's Gate set had basically nothing for CDH, and then hopefully this time around we'll actually get some decent cards in that. Is there a number? I assume there is, but I don't know actually.
Okay, let me look. 2024 release schedule. So we have Ravnica Remastered in January, which I believe is no new cards. Then we have a standard set, Murders at Karlov Manor, February 9th, which is also when they're going to start doing play boosters instead of set boosters. Ravnica Clue Edition is also going to be coming in February of 2024, and I believe Murders at Karlov Manor is based in Ravnica. And Ravnica Clue Edition is a set based off of the board game Clue, but it's going to have some overlap and some cards also being in the main set, which is a little weird. We have the Fallout set in March, which I don't know. That's probably a Secret Lair Universes Beyond type release, I would imagine. Then you get the Outlaws of Thunder Junction, which I believe is a standard set. in quarter 2, where they haven't released a date yet. You get Modern Horizons 3 in quarter 2 of 2024. The Assassin's Creed, whatever that is going to be, Secret Lair, Commander Decks, or packs, or whatever, in July of 2024. Then you have Bloomburrow, which I imagine is a standard set, maybe, or maybe that's a game, in quarter 3 2024. Then Duskmourn House of Horror in quarter 3 2024, and then Pioneer Masters in quarter 4, which I would imagine is no new cards as well. So I'm not seeing anything that is Commander specific there.
Interesting.
But we are seeing Modern Horizons 3 will be sets that are, not standard sets, and then it looks like Fallout, Assassin's Creed, and maybe Bloomburrow, because I see Duskmourn there as well. Maybe Bloomburrow is another one.
Yeah, I can't.
But also with these master sets, like even Ravnica Remastered and Pioneer Masters, they'll probably have commander decks with them. And if they have commander decks, then there will probably be some new cards from the commander decks.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, I guess there's no specific commander set announced at this point, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them take one of these and declare it as a commander set.
Definitely possible.
Yeah. All right, well, cool.
I could also see in 2024 the rules committee becoming an official part of Wizards and it becoming a connected organization.
Ooh, that would be big. That'd be
very big.
That would be huge.
There could be some negative implications to that as well, in terms of proxy friendliness.
All I can
for some
say
events,
at this point is in Rebel I trust.
Yeah. Oh, she's on the rules committee.
I thank God that she's there. Her being there makes me feel much more confident that our best interests are being looked out for. So
definitely.
Yeah. All right. Well,
any other last things you have, or
no? I think that's it. I'm excited for the next year. I think, especially with this the whole Top Deck series. I'm looking forward to see how that shakes out. See how that tournament eventually goes down. What's it? August, I think. That's going to be fun. I'm really excited about that. So
definitely.
Cool. Well, that's it. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe. And really helps us out a lot. We're also on Spotify. So check us out there too if you want to a road trip or something. You can't watch YouTube. And with that, Max, you wanna take us out of here?
Thank you so much for listening to the Colors or Crutch podcast. I am Max Sternberg, aka Wounded Satellite. I do offer CDH coaching as well. I'm an admin on the Kinnan, Elevere, Italian Discord. You can contact me for coaching either through Discord, where I'm called Wounded Satellite, or on Twitter, Sternberg_Max, or also I believe it shows up if you search Wounded Satellite. I'm joined, as always, by... Did I say Godzilla at the beginning? We're going to call you the editor god. Because right. Apparently you are the god of this podcast that gets to decide everything. I'm joined by my incredible godly editor, Max P., the Italian man. Thank you so much for listening to us, and we hope to see you next time.
Thanks, guys.